Hello, thank you, and welcome to the Family Office Network's webinar series. Today's event is hosted by Psy Therapeutics, and presenting for us is David Barlow, Chair and CEO, and Alan Cross, Chief Scientific Officer. David brings over 40 years of experience building and transitioning biopharma companies at all stages of development, from startup to fully integrated commercial, domestic, and global biopharmaceutical corporations. Under his leadership, several biopharmaceuticals were developed and commercialized, delivering significant value for patients and billions for investors. Alan Cross is responsible for leading PSY scientific research programs and developing research capabilities and collaborations. Alan brings more than 40 years of experience in neuropsychiatric research, drug discovery, and development in industry, academic, and advisory roles. Please note that attendees' microphones are muted throughout this event. To submit a question, please use your question chat functionality on the right side of your screen. We will have time for Q&A at the end of the presentation. We will try to address as many questions as we can, and we'll follow up with anyone that we were not able to get to after the event. With that said, David and Alan, I'm going to let you take it from here.
Thanks very much, Lindsay, for all of your help, and also to the Family Office Network for the generous invitation to present and share the Psy story with this global network. My name's Dave Barlow, and I'm the Chair and CEO, and let's get started. So we intend to create new futures in psychiatric treatment and care, and our mission is pretty clear. It's very clear. Committed to discovering and developing innovative medicines which meaningfully improve the lives of people affected by psychiatric disorders and dementia. We need you, however, to join in this compelling journey to ensure that it happens. So we hope that during the course of this presentation, you'll be engaged, and we would look forward to follow-up conversations to see how you can join us in this consequential mission. Our method begins with a world-class team. We have the good fortune, to have several of the world's leaders actively involved in Psy and its discovery and development efforts, and I'll share some of those folks in a minute. As you proceed into a diligence process, we would invite you to have direct conversations with them. Everybody on this team is fully engaged and committed to ensuring that you learn as much as you can so you make the appropriate decision for your company. The markets, as many of you are aware, and we'll highlight those further, are large and growing, and they have significant unmet medical needs. We'll also address the issue of COVID-19 and its dramatic impact on exacerbating an already complex and traumatic situation. Happily, we have an R&D approach, which Alan will share in greater detail, which enhances the productivity of the efforts leading to superior molecules, which really do deliver on our mission to meaningfully improve the lives of our patients. And fortunately, we also have a robust, focused, and risk-balanced pipeline. Alan and I come from our vast experience has always been with pipeline companies, and this is a fortunate experience wherein business risk is mitigated and you're able to make really tough decisions on the development pathway because your whole future is not contingent upon one or two drugs being successful or one platform technology. In the near term, there are clear value-creating milestones, and with the pipeline company, we manage to and invest toward each one of those milestones in a very intentional way, and we'll share those towards the end of the presentation. And finally, there are multiple options to monetize our many assets, and those will be done at the appropriate time per asset and the conditions underway at the moment. But this gives us a lot of flexibility in terms of how we turn those assets into accelerated development towards the patient and also rewards to our shareholders. So our team is seasoned, accomplished, in both the neuropsychiatry and business building expertise. One thing I'd like to point out in terms of my 40-year experience, it was about 20 years ago that I joined the board of McLean Hospital, which is the world's leading psychiatric hospital and perennially among the top 5 departments of psychiatry in the United States. And in 2008, I took over as chair for the next 10, 11 years. So during this period, I got a firsthand experience with the wonderful opportunities to impact neuropsychiatry and also directly experiencing some of the suffering that's involved in this patient population extending into the families. So I'm delighted to now extend my long-term commitment to improving mental health into the business building of Psy. Alan is 40 years also, and he has a vast experience in industry, academia, and also as a lead consultant to some of the government agencies such as NIH. Alan has built teams based on virtual company metrics and has also been involved in some of the major psychiatric drugs that are on the market and have contributed to the patients. Our next slide, we have the Scientific Advisory Board, which includes 2 co-founders. If we look to Jerry Rosenbaum, who's right next to Alan, and Maurizio Fava in particular, they're co-founders of Psy. Jerry essentially built MGH's Department of Psychiatry, which has been world leading for 25 years. He's a co-founder of Psy. He recently retired and now is full-time board member, and also is at the ready anytime to help us and to proactively help move our situation forward and answer questions. Maurizio Fava, to his left, has been the number 2 at MGH, Department of Psychiatry, and after a global search, he was awarded the chair, Jerry's chair, and is now the head of the Department of Psychiatry at MGH. These guys are active. They're world leading in both anxiety, depression, and psychiatry overall. And again, I have to underscore that not only these 2 accomplished scientists and clinicians, but everybody on the screen is world leader in their respective areas. So we're blessed to have this kind of a team, and under Alan's leadership, we've made enormous progress. So here's our pipeline. What are we doing? And I won't go through this in detail. Alan will come to it and spend a little more time on it later. But I just want to set the stage by underscoring that we are a pipeline company and we have risk mitigators within being a pipeline. Specifically, we focus on validated targets where there's known biology. Again, Alan will go through that in more detail. And being a pipeline company, you have the added challenge of remaining focused, which, having done this in the past, we do. And it's a very fortunate position to be in. You'll look down to the bottom, you'll see targets 5 through 8. Those are targets which have been successfully screened. That'll become more apparent to you as we go through the presentation. Those guys are sitting on the bench for now, and they'll be accorded financing and resources over time at the appropriate level. But right now, I want us to focus on our top 4, which are highlighted here. It's principally in anxiety, depression, anxious depression, and related disorders such as PTSD. And we have a marvelous opportunity also for a unique strategy in Alzheimer's by way of the tau protein. More to come on this pipeline. So the psychiatric disorders and dementia affect not only the lives of patients, but also their families. And we'll see beyond that. So we're in a situation now of a mental health crisis. And most of you are probably aware of this. There's unprecedented growth in depression, anxiety, and suicide. And COVID-19 has actually exacerbated the situation. And we'll share with you some of the rather grim outlook with respect to COVID-19's role in actually growing the needs for this very crucial area. Happily, the scientific community has mobilized over the last 10 years to apply advanced technologies and new ways of thinking in the neuropsychiatric arena to actually almost put us on the doorstep of a renaissance of innovative neuropsychiatric innovations. That will come to in a second also. And also, fortunately, public figures, celebrities, athletes, many folks have come to the fore to share their experiences, and through these courageous efforts, their experience with mental health issues. And through these courageous efforts, they've helped on a succeeding effort to destigmatize mental illness. We have a ways to go. We have a ways to go, but I think all of you can sense that, gradually we need to destigmatize mental illness. And think about the model of the cancer, the oncology situation, when some of you may remember the days when if someone noted they had cancer, it could clear out a room and people were very uncomfortable with that. That's changed dramatically now. And we can imagine in the next 5 to 10 years that there's going to continue to be significant progress in destigmatizing this area that affects virtually all of us. In the United States alone, of course, there's large, growing, and underserved adult population. A few statistics here: 40 million plus with anxiety disorders, and that is increasing. 16 million plus with major depressive disorder, that too is increasing. 1 million with Parkinson's disease, and 5 million plus with Alzheimer's, all increasing. And that these disorders transcend the individuals and profoundly impact families and communities. So many of you are probably affected in one way or another, directly or indirectly, by someone who is suffering through a mental illness, and its then impact on others. The individual, we've spoken about a lot of people with 50 million plus, anxiety, depression, dementia, and also the comorbidity rates with other diseases such as cardiovascular and diabetes and cancer. And this also puts additional strain and heartbreak on members of one's family. I personally am working with my mom, who happens to have dementia, and so I know firsthand what this means and the impact on not only her as an individual, but also on her family. 1 in 4 families have at least one individual who has a mental health disorder. There are 8.4 million who provide care for those individuals, which can be a tremendous heartbreak and also certainly a strain. And 32 plus hours per week, which is enormous. Think about that, in addition to their own working schedules for many individuals who do take care of a family member. And it doesn't stop there. If you're fortunate enough to have evaded mental health disorders, either as an individual or as a family member, you don't escape the impact on society, because there's an enormous socioeconomic cost as a result of the mental health crisis. 80 billion plus in annual economic burden, for example, and 193 billion plus in lost wages. So any way you look at it, this is a situation that we have to mobilize as a society to tackle and to deal with, not only for now, but in the future. So if that isn't a challenging platform enough, then we have to think about, okay, how has COVID-19 impacted this situation, if at all? And unfortunately, it's had a dramatic impact on exacerbating the mental health crisis. If we look at this slide, we note the stats that we've been discussing. 50 million suffer from mental illness. There's 300 million plus prescriptions for antidepressants. 60% increase in mental illness in adolescents, which you know what lockdowns are contributing to increasing that number. And then finally, just by way of example, 8 million have PTSD each year, adults. So COVID-19 arrives on the scene, and it's had a dramatic and profoundly detrimental impact in each of these areas. 1 in 3 adults now report a serious impact on their mental health because of COVID. 35% increase in the prescriptions for antidepressants and also anxiolytics. 3 to 4 times increase in rate of youth anxiety, really disturbing. And 25% of folks, of youths, have considered suicide in the past 30 days. And finally, 20% of people discharged from ICUs have reported PTSD. Now, we all look forward to the vaccine and also the therapeutics to deal with the immediate problem of the COVID-19, but the mental health issues will continue. They will not go away once the vaccine and effective therapies are available to folks. And so this burden will continue to grow, this challenge. And one can only imagine, what about the next external pressure that comes unexpectedly on individuals and society? So we need to work together now to not only solve the issues of the day, but also be in strong preparation, be ready for the next external threat. So what's been happening on the drug development side? Well, there was a robust period beginning in '63 with Valium, followed by Xanax, and then the introduction of SSRIs in the late '80s and moving into the '90s. But what we saw here relative to drug development and discovery was those were really meaningful contributors to managing psychiatric illness. But then what happened was the innovation stalled out, and essentially companies were developing Me Too's to the SSRIs in particular, and others, the anxiolytics. And then there became kind of a dark period of little to no innovation because those compounds were generic, and the pharma companies were making decisions to focus in other areas, such as cancer. And cancer is a beautiful model that we should keep in mind, because the cancer focus then turned toward targeted therapy, meaning less just give a patient chemo every and anywhere, to more targeted therapy focused on individual aspects, subpopulations of the disease, and it's been remarkably successful. So there wasn't much innovation, if any, until fairly recently, and this is a function of emerging companies seeing that through the advancements, technological advancements, that the productivity within neuropsychiatric field could be improved considerably and deliver compounds that really were meaningfully differentiated and made significant improvements in the therapy. So this is just a snapshot of some companies that have come to the fore and are developing compounds. And you could almost say that this is the emergence of a renaissance in the innovation in neuropsychiatry. So it's a beautiful time to be considering joining in, participating, and helping move this forward. So, and how does the market respond to these innovations? This is a busy slide. I'm not going to go through it, but what we're seeing in this, these are recent approvals from the FDA. And what we're seeing is that compounds are increasingly being approved for aspects of major diseases. So we may have a compound approved for postpartum depression rather than depression in total, MDD, or agitation associated with a company working on agitation associated with Alzheimer's disease. Again, not tackling the entire Alzheimer's, but a component of it. And this is consistent with the oncology model of a move towards targeted therapy, which should deliver improved therapy. On the far right, you also see, I don't know, there may be some folks in the audience who haven't yet invested in biotech, and the notion of having multi-billion-dollar valuations without any sales could be a curious anomaly, but it's not. It's the way this business operates, and there's enormous amounts of capital that are required to deliver those extremely promising and effective therapies. So if you look to the right, you see this group. This is just a sample again. These are all public companies. Notable 2019 sales volumes. Obviously, some of these folks may have some 2020 sales. These are audited sales. And the top three are the only ones with sales. The third in line has scant sales, but you can see the valuations. So as an investor, the investor is, savvy investors understand that this is an opportunity that's absolutely ripe in this CNS or neuropsychiatry field. And we intend to be a player in this, as we are right now, in the earlier stages. So hopefully that's a snapshot of the situation. The challenges are real, but we're at a time in the evolution of drug discovery and development for neuropsychiatric disorders, which is just perfect for you to consider entering, contributing, and then as patients receive value, so will all those who supported the efforts to get those therapies. So I'd like to turn over the program now to Alan, and he'll provide more insights into how do we do this? What's our method? And what do we expect to produce from the efforts at Psy Therapeutics? Alan?
Thanks, Dave. Yeah, as we built our pipeline, our focus was on developing a series of programs, each of which could deliver highly differentiated novel drugs for the treatment of psychiatric illness, but the drugs that would bring real meaningful benefit to patients. So as Dave mentioned earlier, we're not in the business of me toos. This diagram here gives an overview of the field of neuropsychiatric disorders. And as you've seen, these are large patient populations. There's high unmet need. They're rather diffuse in their definition and diagnosis. And there's a lot of overlap between various disorders and a lot of comorbidity. And this probably reflects, and we're learning more and more about this as biology develops, this probably reflects common risk factors in terms of genetics and environmental risk factors. And this gives us an opportunity with that understanding to really focus on some key mechanisms here. So a good part of our portfolio is focused on stress and stress-related disorders and how the brain responds to stress. And that impacts on depression, on anxiety, and PTSD, but also on some of these other illnesses that you see here, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, and the psychoses. So what we see is that by focusing in this way, we may be able to target our therapies in a more rational way at patient populations. We would like to get to the situation that oncology is in now, as Dave mentioned. But I certainly think whilst we may not be able to target in a personalized way our treatments, we can certainly target subpopulations of patients across this spectrum, and in that way generate more efficacy, bring more benefit. We're focused on anxiety and depression, as I mentioned. We also have an opportunity in Alzheimer's disease, which I'll go into in some detail. And you can see on this diagram, that the comorbidity allows us with one of our programs, Psy-01, to see opportunities initially in Parkinson's disease, but also in depression. So even those apparently unlinked disorders, there's considerable overlap in terms of mechanism, and that gives us opportunity. For each of the programs, we start the process by identifying the drug target, the protein in the body that we're going to hit with our potential drug. And once we've done that, then we move into finding molecules that interact with that target, and then refining and optimizing those molecules to get us to a drug candidate. And once we have that, we can then look to moving that drug candidate into, firstly, safety and toxicity studies, and then into human and patient studies. So our approach here is very much around initially finding the right drug target, the best target, and then using new and emerging technologies to generate what we would say are the best compounds acting at those targets. Once we have those compounds, we can use biomarkers and imaging methodologies to make sure that when we move into human studies, we're getting the dose right, we're hitting the target in the way that we expect to, and we can have much more confidence moving forward into clinical efficacy studies. We pick our targets using our team of experts that Dave introduced you to, and at this stage, we're very aware of risk and managing risk. So we've chosen targets which have a good deal of human clinical or human validation and support from clinical studies, and a strong underlying biology underpinning that as well. In terms of finding and generating lead molecules, we have a collaboration, and I'll go into this in more detail, with a leading screening company with a novel technology. And once we've got those molecules, we have a second foundational collaboration designed to accelerate the path to the drug candidate in an efficient and effective way. And much of that work is done in silico using informatics and predictive molecule methods. And the goal there is to make as fewer compounds as we actually need to. The fewer compounds we make, the fewer we need to screen, and the more efficient the whole process is. I mentioned our foundational collaborations. Here they are. On the left is our collaboration with a screening company, XChem. They have a specific technology, DNA encoded library screening. I won't go into the details of that, but I'm very happy to take questions if you're interested. XChem are one of the originators of this. They're certainly the leaders in this technology, and they're totally focused as a company on this. So they've been able to build this platform out into a leading position. The libraries, the chemical libraries that they have are large, so they can screen over 250 billion molecules. But then it's not just that they're large. They've invested heavily in the chemical methodology producing these libraries, and so they cover what we call chemical space. They're very diverse, and also they're very high quality. And of course, in this process, quality is extremely important. Garbage in, garbage out applies here, as it does elsewhere. Once we've got those lead compounds, then we need to refine and modify those to get to our drug candidates. And here our second foundational collaboration with Intellicin comes into play. So these are experts in cheminformatics. The structures we work on are known. Their structures are known, so we can use computational modeling to predict and help guide our chemistry efforts to get us to a drug candidate efficiently and effectively. But I should stress the combination of these two technologies is not unique in industry, but it's certainly unique in terms of small companies such as us. And we have a very, given that we're a virtual organization, we can be very flexible in the way that we use these, and we can integrate them into our process in quite novel ways. And the end result here is all about getting to the best molecules. We don't want to be, as we move further down the development path, compromising because our molecules are not good enough. As I mentioned, we're a virtual company. We've put a lot of effort into establishing collaborations and partnerships that give us all the infrastructure we need to move our compounds through the development process and into clinical studies. Many of these collaborations are true collaborations. We have FTEs in place at these laboratories, and we work hard to really work together with companies rather than work on a fee-for-service basis. And this has certainly proved very successful for us. So coming back now to the pipeline, as Dave mentioned, having a pipeline really enables us to manage risk in the process and to make good decisions, just as any pipeline does. And of course, the risk is that we spread ourselves too thinly. So these two programs that you see here, Psy-05 and Psy-01, are currently our top priorities, Psy-05 being the top. We're also investing in two others. And then we have, as Dave mentioned, a number of targets which we've successfully screened but are currently on hold. Psy-05, the top program, is targeting anxiety disorders. It's based around the human clinical data on cannabinoids. We're exploiting the endogenous cannabinoid mechanism here. So we have good confidence in gaining efficacy. And in our screening process, we got a very large output. So we have some very good compounds which came out of the screen, which we've been able to refine, and we're moving towards drug candidate very rapidly. There's also an opportunity here for pain. I'm sure you're aware of the efficacy of cannabinoids in pain. This is outside of our main focus. So what we've done here is we've put in a grant to National Institute of Health on the basis of a non-opioid analgesic. That grant has been reviewed and got good reviews, which would be available under CDA. And we're just waiting for a funding decision now. But this gives us another way to exploit the huge potential in the portfolio. Second program here, this is based on validated drugs. So this is a validated target. There are drugs on the market right now, but these drugs all have a common and significant tolerability and toxicity issue, and they don't get in the brain very well either. We understand why that occurs, and we've designed our screens to identify compounds that don't have those liabilities. We've been successful in our screen. We're bringing compounds forward here where we've got novel chemistry and novel pharmacology. And this becomes a very interesting, relatively low risk program where we can address both Parkinson's disease and depression. The fourth program here in Alzheimer's, I'll go into in just a little more detail to give you a flavor of how we work. So this is, as Dave mentioned, a project which targets tau. Tau is a protein involved in structural proteins in neurons, and it's the major protein involved in the pathology of Alzheimer's disease, in the generation of tangles. So these are protein deposits that occur in the brain that reflect degeneration of neurons, and misfolding of this protein tau is the main factor behind the development of these protein deposits, or tangles as they're called. And currently I think tau is probably the hottest target in Alzheimer's disease. There's a lot of activity and interest in this target. And the approach to this is to prevent tau aggregating or to remove tau in some way. Most of the current activity around this centers on using antibodies to get rid of tau. Much as has been used in Alzheimer's disease with beta amyloid in a similar way. We view this as very unlikely to succeed. And the problem with this approach is that tau is an intracellular protein. The first steps in aggregation occur inside cells, and antibodies can't penetrate into cells. So they're only going to pick up the tau once the neurons have degenerated and the tau is released. So our approach is a small molecule which binds and inhibits aggregation of tau inside the cell. And our target is the very early stages of that aggregation of tau. So the way we approached this was the Psy scientists were able to guide and produce a small tau oligomer, which is illustrated here if you can see the pointer, which we could stabilize and we could use for this DNA encoded library screening, which we ran with our collaborators at XChem. And we set the screen up to exclude a lot of dye-like molecules which we know bind to this target. And we came up with some very interesting novel compounds. We've been able to develop those with medicinal chemistry. They have reasonable drug-like properties. They get in the brain. They block tau aggregation in cell systems. And we're currently about to test this in an in vivo model of tau aggregation using a transgenic mouse, which will give us, I think, a clear decision point as to whether we take this program forward ourselves, whether we seek a partner. It is outside of our main focus, of course, but a very, I think, exciting and interesting approach. And we've used a similar approach to all of our targets. Psy provides the novel biochemistry, protein chemistry to deliver the targets. They're screened by XChem, and then we develop them on. So just finally, coming back to the pipeline, and again, I won't go into this in huge detail, but for each of our programs here, we're very clear on where the limitations are of current treatments. And you'll be aware, even in the large indications like depression, anxiety, where there are available treatments, there is a huge amount of unmet medical need and patient need out there, and that's because these drugs are not certainly optimal in that regard. So we differentiate against them, and we're very clear in terms of our target profiles. And as we develop these programs, And as Dave mentioned and drew parallels earlier, our goal is to really transform the development and treatment of psychiatric illness in a way that's parallel to oncology, so that we can target our treatments to specific patient groups, and we can really hope for a much improved benefit in those groups, patient groups. And so with that, I'll hand back to Dave.
Thank you, Alan. So we have a multi-pronged financing strategy, which has three main components. The first is equity financing. And we have completed, last year, we completed a seed round in which we raised $4 million. We're right now in the process of a Series A preferred round where the target is 20 million. In addition to equity, we have non-dilutive specific strategies to access capital by way of non-dilutive sources. And Alan has mentioned this, the NIH being one potential source. We do have 2 grants that have been submitted, and those would fuel significant amounts of program development. However, in all of our business models, we don't assume that we're going to get the grant money. So they reflect, our models reflect that those will be fueled by equity sources. And in addition to grants, there are also foundations that are specific to really challenging disease areas such as Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. And we have clear opportunity to engage with those groups for, again, non-dilutive financing. Corporate partnerships can be a hybrid, as you know. And so we anticipate that we'll be in discussions with some potential corporate partners. Actually, some have reached out to us already to have any manner of collaborations, which could be straight cash or cash and equity, etc. So there are many avenues to finance the company. And right now, though, we are focused on the Series A with a $20 million target, and would love for you to consider it. And what the use of funds from this financing will drive a really compelling portfolio and profile of our assets over the 3-year period. So I think looking at this pictorially, the main thing is to look up at the first in human row. And so over the course of 22 and 23, we're going to have 4 compounds in the clinic. We would expect our lead program to have completed 2 phase 1 studies. 2 other programs would be in the clinic in a phase 1. A 4th program, which may be by way of partnership, would also be in the clinic at the end of the time frame. And then we start to elevate some of our lead series, Target 5, for example, which has been successfully screened. So what you can see, you just get a sense that as we move into, as you're considering, okay, what can happen to this company and the value creating milestones over the next 2 to 3 years, even before, what you see here is an extremely robust portfolio. And so going into the next round, we would anticipate that that would be reflected in related valuations. So all in all, this is Psy is a extremely compelling opportunity. By way of quick recap, we have a world-class team. These markets, as you've been very patient, as we've addressed some overview about the significant markets and the fact that they're growing and are further growing by way of COVID and other external shocks coming ahead. Alan beautifully went through our R&D approach, which fundamentally is designed to increase the productivity towards the offering of superior molecules which make a difference. We're not in the business of marginal differentiation, and having a pipeline, if we come across a program that is faced with that as its future, it will most likely be discontinued because we have the benefit of other programs in the pipeline. And that's a function of our robust focus and risk balance pipeline. Value creating milestones, both in the near, medium term, and certainly we could talk about the long term, they're there. So, and there are things that we drive toward in our planning and our execution. And then finally, there are several options to monetize these many assets, and we'll be, very selective and thoughtful about how we do that process. So we very much would love for you to dig in deeper and join us in this mission. And Alan's coordinates are noted below, as are mine. Love to hear from you. And why don't we open it up for some questions? Lindsay?
David, Alan, thank you so very much. What a great topic today, especially with everything going on in the world. Yes, jumping into Q&A, again, we encourage your questions, so please use your questions chat functionality on your screen. Submit those over, and we will go ahead and answer them. Let's see. I'm just going to dive right in, gentlemen, if that's okay. Question 1. How do you think about pipeline expansion? What are the most important criteria for indications that you would consider?
Well, I'll jump in first. Pipeline expansion, fortunately, we have the benefit of having many assets that we intend to move into at the appropriate time. So happily, we're not in a situation where we have, 1 or 2 compounds and that we're really in need of more shots on goal, so to speak. So that's how we think about it right now. We think about staying focused, moving our current portfolio forward, and then dipping into our other assets, which are real and compelling. And that would be the primary source of our pipeline expansion. And all of those are a function of very thoughtful design in terms of unmet medical needs. And as Alan articulated, the level of biology that's already known, so that these aren't wild shots. There's some risk containment to them, and we're delighted to be in that position, and never complacent about it. But we do have our own inherent expanded pipeline potential.
Fantastic, thank you. Moving on, next question. Have you formulated any psychedelic compounds as of yet? This might be an Alan question.
We're very aware of the potential of psychedelics in this arena, and we have not ourselves gotten involved directly in that. But you'll have heard one of our programs is based on the effects of cannabinoids. So our approach is more, rather than trying to mimic a cannabinoid like THC, we will probe the mechanism and find the best place to interfere in the mechanism to produce a therapeutic effect. And we did consider true psychedelics in that regard, but the technical issues there for us were too demanding.
And we are encouraged, I'd just like to add that we're encouraged that this kind of innovative effort is underway, because it undoubtedly has a potential to deliver some value.
Fantastic, thank you. Moving on, I'm going to kind of incorporate 2 questions in one here because they are in the same, category, which is money and fundraising. First question is, what is the valuation on the 20 million, and what is the proposed pre-money val for the upcoming round?
The pre-money valuation is in the range of 35 million, 35 to 40. And that's consistent with comps, especially if you match them up precisely with asset bases. So we'd be happy to discuss that in more detail, and so that answers that question. Mm-hmm. I think.
Great, thank you. And again, kind of going off of the dollar amounts here, someone would like if you could clarify. I believe it was on an earlier slide, if it was 800 billion or 80 billion.
800.
800. Great. Thank you so much.
And there are references also, and we'd be happy to send those along.
Perfect. Okay, moving on. Next question. What do you see as the right time to bring in a partner? Do you envision keeping some assets in-house and commercializing yourself, or will partnership be central to path forward in each program?
Yeah, that's a great question. And that goes back to how we manage our asset base, our pipeline. So we're very clear about each value inflection point, the amount of investment that we would need to get to that go, no go point. So I think the main response is that we don't have a cookie cutter approach for every program. So this is not a situation where we say at the end of phase 2, we intend to out-license every program. Alan brought up a good example of tau, for example. Once we get a proof of concept preclinically, we'll have the option to then go out to the many companies who are in Alzheimer's, who we believe could be interested in this, and then partner at that earlier stage. Others we would drive through phase 2. And frankly, because we have experience developing and commercializing global specialty products, there are going to be some very interesting opportunities to hold all the way. So it's a combination, and it's going to be a function of some very careful analysis of the value creation process.
Great,
but
thanks so much.
It's nice to know that we've built field forces for global commercialization, and that's an option. We wouldn't imagine doing that for, where we would require 3,000 reps. That I can tell you is not going to happen.
Great, thank you. Next question, are you dependent on the XChem platform for all your drug discovery?
I'll take that, Dave. Our collaboration with XChem is based on screening 8 targets. And within that, there are sort of technical limitations as to what can be screened. So one of our programs, and this is around the role of stress in anxiety and depression, the target that we're most interested in wasn't appropriate for XChem DNA encoded library screening. So we screened that, we got our lead compounds through another means. So no, we're not totally dependent on XChem. We have the flexibility to screen targets outside of that collaboration, and we've certainly done that. Having said that, I've been involved in collaborations with this type of technology in the past, and the output that we've got from XChem has been tremendous. So certainly for most of our programs, we've got absolutely what we need from XChem.
Great, thank you. Okay, let's see. Next question. Who will own the intellectual property for your novel compounds?
Psy will own the IP 100%. Even though we're working with companies such as XChem and Intellicent, who have their own proprietary technology, they will not participate in the IP. We will own it all.
Great, thank you. Next question, kind of back to the money side of things. What do you see your quarterly burn rate at? And assuming a successful 20 million raise, how long until you envision a Series B raise?
Yeah, the burn rate is happily, we have a lot of flexibility in our ability to control that because we are a virtual company. So I won't go into any monthly burn rate at this point. Happy to discuss that in more detail. Also, share plans, very specific plans as to how those use of funds would be applied. But we would imagine that we probably seek additional financing from an equity side in 2.5 years, 2 years, 2.5 at the earliest.
Great, thanks. Let's see, next question. Can you discuss any preliminary data that has you excited about your top programs?
I'll take that, Dave. Yeah, we have some, certainly with the leading program that I described, the development of those compounds has been one of the most successful screens that XChem have run. They've been very clear with us on that. And so this is not a single finding, but the depth and breadth of the chemistry equity that we have in that program is outstanding. And that makes it very exciting because, you know, even if, and I think it's highly unlikely, but even if we hit trouble with one chemical series, we have plenty of others that we can go back and bring forward. The second program I described, where we're working from a validated a known target, a validated approach, where we designed our screens to avoid the liabilities of current drugs, and we were successful in that. But as we've developed those compounds and using the informatics approaches of IntelliSyn, we're clearly into a completely novel pharmacology there, which really makes that very exciting, because, you know, the risk of failure through lack of efficacy in that program is very low. So it's all about getting good compounds, and we certainly seem to have done that.
Great, thank you. That does seem to be, as of now, all the questions that have pulled through, which is great. We're almost to the top of the hour anyhow. There was a few questions on receiving this information after the presentation, and the answer is yes. And myself and some members from the PSY team will be following up with you guys all individually. So if there's anything else that we can answer for you, we would love to get you in contact. Alan and David, is there anything else that you'd like to add before we sign off?
I would just like to thank all the attendees and would really look forward to meeting with you in discussion, Zoom, and someday in person, and discussing this compelling opportunity in more detail, and discuss how we could work together to make this happen. So thank you to all attendees, and also to Lindsay and the Family Office Network for this wonderful invitation to interact with this great group.
Absolutely. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much, gentlemen. Have a great day, and we look forward to connecting with you all soon. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.